Welcome to the Shift Report, the podcast from M-Centric and the M-Centric Foundation. M-Centric is the go-to information and resources hub designed exclusively for the emergency medicine community. We regularly host key leaders from the field who share their insights and experience. Our goal is to inform our listeners and to encourage you to use what you learn to improve your practice and improve yourself. To learn more, please visit us at mcentric.org. Today's episode is sponsored by Lotus Clinician Wellbeing. Lotus Clinician Wellbeing provides consulting services designed to prioritize clinician wellness in order to provide the best care for their patients. Lotus Clinician Wellbeing supports healthcare professionals with personalized coaching and consulting services for groups and individuals in areas such as career development, leadership, burnout prevention, practice management, and more. For more information, visit lotusclinicianwellbeing.com. Today, we welcome Rob Orman. Dr. Orman lives and works in Oregon. He's an emergency physician who burned out not once, not twice, but 3 times. Rather than throw his hands up, he has turned that experience into work as a certified executive coach. Through Orman Physician Coaching, he provides help to physicians in a number of ways. He'll share those experiences with us today. Welcome, Rob.
Till, such a treat to be here. Oh my gosh. I just got the best kind of tingly chills.
Well, that's great. I don't necessarily normally get that response from guests, but thanks very much. And we met through a mutual contact who you've been some help to, and we probably have lots of other contacts you've helped along the way. And so I really appreciate the time today to talk about what you do in helping other physicians.
Oh, well, that contact is Patrick O'Malley, the Uber Mensch of Uber Mensches.
He is the great connector, and I think many listeners will know him, and he'll probably hear this as soon as it gets published. Now, you spent a fair amount of time, 20 years or so, in community practice. You worked clinically, you trained in Denver, and went into community practice, I imagine, in a variety of settings. And tell us about that, and then how you figured out what you were going through and how you managed it yourself.
Yeah, it definitely took some working through denial to see what I was going through. Let me back up a little bit. So when I was a senior resident, I took a survey at ASAP. This is ASAP in San Diego. And you're just going through where all the vendors are and you're seeing all the gadgets. You had Kevin Spencer here, Ring Rescue, go check out your Ring Rescue and all that. And so I took a survey. It's like, hey, fill this out. Sure. Totally anonymous. A couple months later, I got an email, or there's a letter. This before email, before we had emails. This was in 1998. I got this. And they said, hey, we're really worried about you, that you're, if not going to burn out, you are burnt out. And I thought, well, first off, we don't burn out. I mean, come on. We're emergency docs. Come on. That also wasn't really something we discussed. And there's also this aspect of, especially, when did you graduate residency, Till?
Before you. I graduated from residency in 1992.
Okay. But we were of a similar era, and there was a very much of a ¿Quién es más macho?
Oh, yes.
To that. And, we're especially, where we both did our training, there was a real bunch like bad attitude to it. I thought, don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I am? You don't talk to me like that. So I remember going into my next shift at Denver General and just feeling this sense of dread. Like, oh gosh, I hope it's not busy. I hope the waiting room's not full. I hope I don't get hammered, which of course you are. And I was super stressed about all of these things completely beyond my control. And what I was really stressed about was being overwhelmed, was the volume. But at the same time, I was also chief resident and, you get the good jobs. And so I took a job at the busiest, highest reputation trauma center that I could find, private trauma center. And it's like, oh my gosh, I am super stressed. I am super stressed. I don't know if I can handle this. Then I moved, my wife and I moved to Oregon where my wife was. I took another job and it was even busier. And I was like, whoa, within a couple months, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. And I would have a pit of acid in my stomach driving into work every time. And I had taken a job at the busiest hospital in the city. What is the thing that really got me was volume. I couldn't keep up with my charts. I was staying 4 hours after every shift. And as you know, Till, if you keep up on your documentation, well, you might leave on time. But the more that's left to the end, the more tired you are, and the recall and time just adds up. And the old adage of the longer you stay, the longer you stay.
Oh, yes.
And so in that first year, I started looking at and getting the applications for this one we were all paper baby. This is the
Right. Oh,
analog
yes.
here. Ophthalmology, anesthesia. What are things I can do that I'm interested in and I will not be overwhelmed? And there was this sense of unsustainability to it. So if you look at the aspects of burnout, I didn't know this then. You have emotional exhaustion, you have cynicism, you have a sense of decreased personal efficacy. So those are the three buckets. I didn't have cynicism. I loved emergency medicine. I loved my patients. I loved resuscitations. I felt like I was making a difference, but it was emotional exhaustion. I just did not have any to give. And so I worked in community medicine my entire career. And for the first 10, maybe 12 years of my career, what this looked like is I would feel this burnout, this emotional exhaustion that this is not sustainable. I can't keep going like this. And then I would do a project. I'd say, oh, I'm going to make a pathway. And it's just how we all treat AFib, or I'm going to be the ultrasound director. And this is when you could do that without a fellowship or really knowing what you were doing,
Right.
but kind of faking it. And then I'm going to start a podcast. And so I did all these things. And that's when there were like six podcasts around. I would do these things and they would really be purpose driven. Just hit that right note. But the problem was I wasn't addressing the thing that was actually burning me out. So I was having this little pressure release valve, but I wasn't actually working on the pressure itself. So there's a kind of an overview of what I was going through, what I was doing. And that was over 10 years of every day going into work with that pit of acid, thinking, I'm going to get hammered. How much longer can I do this? Eventually, I reached a breaking point, which we can talk about, but I'll pause there.
I was once advised by a colleague of mine in an academic setting that you need to develop a shtick, one thing that you're particularly good at. And as you mentioned, ultrasound or AFib or something where you can do a project and kind of be the expert. Because in emergency medicine, we do tend to do lots of different things. You can be asked to write a chapter on congestive heart failure and pediatric fractures on the same day because you can do almost anything, but that doesn't necessarily address the underlying work stresses that you have. And it sounds like you were searching for ways to manage that, and you weren't really finding them.
That's for sure. Can I touch on what you just said? The shtick. I love the shtick. I love the term shtick. It just
Yes,
sounds great. Shtick. Very sweaty, very sticky.
that's exactly what he said to me. You need a shtick.
So the way I phrase this is your N plus one, because clinical emergency medicine is a grind. There's just no getting around it. Wherever you work, there's varying degrees of grind, but especially if you're in a community, every shift, you are just working it. And having some other place to focus your interest in medicine, or it could be you're inventing something, or you've got a side hustle, they say, or a side career. It kind of evens out the intensity with which you approach work. And let me take that a step further. I'm curious what you think about this. We both have a lot of highway miles under our belt in emergency
That we
medicine.
do.
And we're actually just writing this up for our next newsletter, is that a goal at the very beginning of your emergency medicine career, and this, I mean, this might sound like blasphemy, but a goal should be to put yourself in the position where you can work part time. You can work part time clinical shifts because working full time only clinical shifts is such an energy sap because you don't have time to recover. And the outside world says, "Oh, what are you complaining about? You work so little. You only work a couple days here and there. Why are you whining?" Well, the outside world does not get it. That a single shift is physically, emotionally, spiritually draining on every level. And that takes time to recover from. Now, you might get to a point where you can work part time and you don't want to. Think, oh, that's great. But having the option to go back and not work that full cadre of shifts, which nowadays is 14, 16, 18, 20 shifts a month, pulling back from that will extend your career, allows you to recover, reduces the intensity or risk or chance of burnout. How does that land with you?
It's an interesting line of reasoning, and there's a certain wisdom to it. We talked to a number of those who provide executive coaching and professional guidance, such as yourself, and others who are clinicians who are inventing things, and others who are working in the business of emergency medicine. Part-time people hear part-time and there's probably each have a definition of what part-time is. It
There's
doesn't mean you only,
shame
well, yes, and
associated
it
with it.
doesn't mean you only work a shift a month. It means you work something less than a full-time clinical obligation. And to your point, you retain the ability to go back to full-time if you want to, or if you need to for some reason. And to have other things that one does that separate you from, no doubt, the physical, emotional toll of working a shift is a good thing. And I think what I think we can all agree on is a goal of making sure that our younger emergency physicians learn how to deal with those decision points early and plan for it and understand, to put it very simply, what they're getting into and how to manage it early rather than going 15 or 20 years without the tools to guide them through that.
I have a lot of clients who are year one attendings and are so overwhelmed by everything. And it's just, how am I going to sustain this? And they're working in really hard shops and they're working a lot of hours and they don't have time to recover. And I think having the plan that you're talking about is what am I going to do? And knowing that, all right, let me just posit this as a possible mindset, as a possible career path for emergency medicine, that I do all this training and I'm going to work part time. Yep. Yep. That's the answer because full time in most groups was not designed with you in mind. Full time was designed to cover all of the shifts. It wasn't, how do we give our docs the best longevity? In private groups, it's often, how do we give our docs the best longevity? But that's not the case for most docs. So when you graduate, the very first thing, the number one priority is to figure out how you're going to get out of debt. Number one, live like a resident, figure out how you're going to get a debt, and immediately, and do this even before you graduate, figure out your baseline. What is the amount of money that you spend or you need to pay your bills, pay your rent, put money in retirement? What's your nut that you need to take home? Now, that's going to get bigger as you get older and you have lifestyle creep and a family, or growing family. Knowing that number, critical. Getting out of debt, having a plan for that, not freaking out that you have debt. I want to get out of debt so that I have the financial freedom to make that choice. And then find that sweet spot for you. You will probably not be in that sweet spot of the right number of shifts when you graduate residency. You will be working too many shifts.
Right.
I have yet to see that not be the case. Then experiment. What is a sweet spot? Because if you work too few, you and I both know if you work too few, you get skill decay. You work too many, you get crispy, you get charred. There is somewhere in the middle where you are able to recover, yet you keep your skills sharp. 3, 4 shifts a month in a community hospital, probably not enough. 16, 18 shifts a month, that's a lot. Somewhere in between is what works for you. You can craft your job and don't have to accept that here's what the job is, take it or leave it. You craft it what you want it to look like, but and consider that you're setting yourself to be able to do that from day one.
It sounds like just having some planning, and perhaps having planning that you get assistance with to get a realistic view of what you're getting into. What sorts of things are you learning from those clients who are early on in their careers, even a year out, realizing they need some help, versus those who may be 10 to 15 years out with a different timeline and different pressures, and how is that changing over time, or what have you seen?
I think that the pre and post COVID era of emergency medicine is a real inflection point. The docs who came of age during or after COVID, even though they were excited to get into it, find it hard to swallow a lot of what goes on in emergency medicine with incivility, with administrative demands, with shift demands, versus many years ago, there was a lot more freedom. I mean, I hate to say back in the old days, but back back when you and I had no gray hair,
Yes.
a doctor, this is going to shock some people. A doctor could walk in to the CMO or CEO's office and say, "Hey, this is a problem we need to fix. This is not going to stand." And things would change. I mean, now could you imagine why? I mean, nobody ever even sees those folks. There is such a disconnect. And I would say that the problems or the challenges that I see with year one docs and year 15 docs, they're actually similar. A lot of it has to do with mindset, has to do with breaking down these things that seem so overwhelming, and different things overwhelm different docs. The practice of emergency medicine is itself overwhelming. In the middle of a shift, almost anywhere, you're going to be task saturated. Let's use this as an example. So let me back up a little bit. The type of coaching I do, there's 3 or 4 main areas. So one of the main types of coaching I do is behavioral coaching, which is docs who have gotten in trouble for their behavior. We help them get out of it. Super
Mm-hmm.
intensive coaching, incredibly rewarding. Love that. Burnout and overwhelm, feeling stuck in your career, and then a smattering of leadership coaching. But it's really that burnout and behavioral coaching that I focus on. So in the burnout, if we're talking about that, there are certain things that we're just not taught in training. If I ask a doc, "Hey, how do you determine what's the cause of this patient's chest pain?" Every single emergency doc will say, "Let me tell you how I evaluate chest pain." If I said, "What is your structured approach to mid-shift overwhelm?" That point about 4 hours in, where you have patients coming in, patients to be discharged, patients to admit, consultant calls coming in, results to review, ambulances coming in, outside hospitals sending patients, and then all of your psych patients need something. What
Right.
what is your structured approach to that thing that happens every shift? Most people don't have a structured approach. They just white knuckle it and just say, "I'm just going to get through it." Some do, some don't. But it's things like that, having approaches for the stuff that's showing up all the time, whether it's something like that, which is going to be a tactical approach to how you manage your job, to what is my mindset when I get into conflict with a difficult consultant? How do I manage my inner critic in the recess bay and not feel like everyone's watching me as if I am an idiot and don't know what I'm doing. So, because physicians are high level achievers, most of them come with a similar substrate, a similar cognitive substrate, a similar mindset substrate. And that is, we push, we are hard drivers, we succeed, we are A plus, we come through the small part of the funnel, oftentimes driven by negative reinforcement, by internal criticism that says in some way, you're not enough, or they're going to figure out you don't know what you're doing. And that drives us. And it got us really far. And then you get out into residency, or there's a lot more breathing room after that, or attending hood. And that inner voice that got you so far is not a recipe for joy. But then you don't know what to do with it. It's so deeply ingrained. How do I navigate this thing?
There's a lot to unpack in what you've just said, and I think a listener will listen to that and certainly hear perhaps a very close version of what their current self is. And as you talk through how you manage chest pain, we all have our list of things we do, but any one of us can think through a shift from last week or 20 years ago with a set of difficult interpersonal interactions with consultants or patients or staff, or the, as you mentioned, the inevitable operational problem of too much coming in and not enough resources to manage it, and trying to prioritize that on top of maybe getting something to eat and going to the bathroom, which are pretty basic needs, which you didn't mention, but something probably 4 hours in you probably ought to think about.
Yeah.
Um, and and that is a set of issues that perhaps can drive someone out of the specialty, sometimes very quickly. And I think, at the M-Centric Foundation and through some of our work and our interviews, we're exploring that a bit more, and how to help to manage the issue of those that are in residency or a year out who are already looking for their exit strategy. And fundamentally, we want good doctors to take care of patients and help to maintain them, which sounds like it's really your goal too, that you're doing on a client by client basis.
Oh, for sure. And the podcasts, Stimulus and our newsletters and our Instagram, it's all the same. It's to elevate the experience of clinicians. That's it. And some of that is just survival. It's just, I just need to get through this shift. But what you and I want to do is not just, hey, we want to, pull you out of the of a dark place, or out of the pit of despair, is we want to help you flourish. And I mean, you're just mentioning urinating. It's so many docs and nurses and students like, I don't have time to pee during my shift, during an 8 or 12 hour shift. And people have strategies where they don't drink too much, or they just hold it in. It's like, I don't have time to do this. Or maybe I'll go once, or eat or drink. And those are self-imposed restrictions that we think we don't have time because we don't put boundaries around that, like the boundaries we put around a shift. You think you and I know I've had this, I bet you have had this, have had partners who have done shifts walking around with an IV pole. They are not,
Yes.
yes, everyone listening has probably seen that or maybe done that. You are not going to miss your shift. That is protected. We don't always protect the things in our personal life around that. But in a shift, we don't protect ourselves. So, and when I talk to clients about this, not every client, but some who they are just suffering. And at some point we get to, okay, how are you hydrating? How are you feeding? And how are you evacuating during your shift? Basic functions. The hierarchy of needs, we're pretty towards the bottom. Well, like when I can, or this. Okay, I'm going to bring up a crazy idea here. I want you to schedule a break. Not a long, it doesn't have to be half an hour. I want you to go outside. I want you to eat a sandwich and have a drink, not talk to anybody, not get on your phone. Set an alarm for it. If you're in a recess, finish your recess. But otherwise, take 5 minutes, find your place, eat, drink, go to the bathroom. Almost always there is a lot of resistance to doing that. It's
I'm
this
sure there
different,
is.
there's no way I can do that. All of these. You know what, Till? When you and I are both long gone from this planet, there are still going to be people in the waiting room. It might even be the same ones that are there now. And it's so hard to get over that idea of I cannot take a break because there is this constant pressure head that I need to address. I need my doc to patient time, my just the discharge time, all of these other things. When we have looked at this in our courses and one-on-one clients, we found that doing this, say, take 3 5-minute breaks a shift, which sounds crazy, you actually get more efficient, not less efficient. It does not take away from your overall numbers or your throughput. It's better in the end.
A fascinating take on wellness and self care during a shift in life. You mentioned a mutual colleague, Tori McGowan, who's an expert on sleep, which is something that we probably pride ourselves on not really getting very much and quick turnarounds and things like that. But that's also an element of self care that one needs to manage to be a functioning emergency physician and a functioning human, which is also important. I think we need to realize we have a life outside of the emergency department. And while we very proudly identify ourselves as emergency physicians, probably up front, we have friends and neighbors and family and personal lives and should have interests outside.
Talking about sleep, something that is so common in emergency medicine is a very specific type of sleep procrastination where you come home from a late shift, your mind is still buzzing. Tell me if this has ever happened to you, Till. Your mind is still buzzing. It's just you can't shut it off. So maybe you have a couple drinks or you watch TV for 2, 3, 4 hours just so it will turn down. And that becomes a habit. We think that's natural. I mean, we're just talking about one little quanta of sleep. When you were mentioning wellness and self-care and Tori talking about sleep, just that one little thing, that very specific element of sleep procrastination. We either do something such as drink alcohol, which will disrupt the quality of our sleep, although it'll make us go to sleep, or we stay up a long time and then decrease the block of time that we will be asleep without thinking, hey, this actually might not be so good. We think, oh, it's natural that I need this couple hours of come down time to just let my brain quiet. But there's ways to quiet the brain and process the day. This is what your brain's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's on, it's making decisions. You've got that decision making brain. How do I shut that off? And so that one step like that, saying, whoa, my after shift ritual or habit or boundary or bookend, I could change that one thing and then get more sleep after my shift, which will have such a ripple effect in the rest of my life, as you were talking about with my family, with the things that I love to do. I'm just going to have more time. I'm going to feel better and be more rested. So it's not always the things that we think of, okay, I just need to get more sleep. It is how am I thwarting my best effort here?
That's great. And this is truly a fascinating discussion. Lots to unpack. And you've spent now another career helping people through this. You have your stimulus podcast and newsletters and your services. How do people find you, hear more of this from you, and reach out to you?
People can find me at roborman.com, my name, ROBORMAN.com. And podcast is on all of the pod players or on the website, Stimulus with Rob Orman, MD.
That's great. Really wonderful work you are doing in a very important area for our colleagues, and then wonderful content through your podcast for those who really need to hear this. Hopefully, the ones who really need to hear it will hear it. And we can all encourage our colleagues to listen to more of this. So, Rob, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Till, always a treat, my friend.
And thank you for joining us in this installment of our M-Centric podcast series, The Shift Report. And special thanks to Dr. Rob Orman for sharing his important insights. For more content, networking, and innovation in the world of emergency medicine, please visit mcentric.org.